In this tutorial, I will be showing you how the 3D cursor works in the 3D viewport. The 3D cursor is denoted by this symbol in the center of your axial lines. It is also available to be moved via the vertical menu option on the left upper part of the viewport. It is always just called cursor when you hover your mouse over it, but is referred to as the 3D cursor in Blender's manual. Starting with moving the 3D cursor, the quickest way to move the 3D cursor is to use the shortcut Shift right click wherever your mouse cursor is hovering in the viewport. For more advanced options, you can either use the shortcut Shift S to get this radial menu, or you can go to the Object menu on the top left ribbon of the viewport window, then choose Snap, which will provide the same options as the radial menu. But these options only work with objects being in the viewport, except for the option Cursor to World Origin, which is how you return the 3D cursor to its default location. Adding two primitive cubes into the workspace, I will demonstrate what these options are used for. It should also be noted that the first four options are related to moving objects based on the 3D cursor's location, and not moving the 3D cursor itself, while the next four options directly influence the location of the 3D cursor. Starting with the top option, Selection to Grid, moves the selected objects, or object, to the nearest grid overlay point. The next option, Selection to Cursor, moves all selected objects' origins, whether active or inactive selections, to the position of the 3D cursor. In case you're not familiar with these terms I just used, origin refers to the little orange dot associated with an object's pivot point. This point controls where an object is scaled, rotated, or moved from. Inactive selection is denoted by a yellowy-orange border and is used as the primary object in various functions, such as UV map transfers or parent-child relationships. An active selection can only be one object at a time, while an inactive selection can be one or more objects indefinitely. The inactive selection is denoted by a reddish-orange outline and is passive to the active selection, such as when parenting one or more inactive objects to an active object. The active object being the parent object, while the inactive objects become children of the parent object. In the case of the UV map example I gave, it is the active object's UV map that will override any inactive object's UV maps that are currently selected when using a Copy UV Maps command from the link/data transfer menu. Selection to Cursor, Keep Offset, is almost the same as the previous option, Selection to Cursor, except in addition to moving all selected objects' origins to the position of the 3D cursor, the Keep Offset part considers the object's position in the world space and offsets the origin of the object by the offset of its current location in the world space. Selection to Active moves all inactive object selections to the location of the active selection. The next four options directly change the position of the 3D cursor, rather than moving objects to the location of the 3D cursor. So the first option, Cursor to Selected, moves the 3D cursor to the selected object's origin instead of moving the object's origin to the location of the 3D cursor, as was the case with the first option. One important workflow caveat to note: if you have inactive selections, Blender will look for the center value between the various origins of the multiple selected objects to place the 3D cursor with this option. Cursor to Origin is the reset to the default location as mentioned earlier. Cursor to Grid moves the 3D cursor to the nearest grid overlay point, and the last of these three options, Cursor to Active, moves the 3D cursor to the origin point of the active selection of an object. Now, how can you use this cursor in your projects? First, hover your mouse over Transform Pivot Point, located in the central top ribbon, left of the snapping tool toggle, and right of the transformation orientation icon. From the drop-down menu, choose the second option, 3D Cursor. If you notice, when I rotate or scale this object, it is proportionally altered starting at the 3D cursor. A basic movement-based transform is a little less noticeable, but you are moving the object from this point when using the 3D cursor as your transform pivot point. For more control over the 3D cursor, toggle on the snapping tool denoted by a magnet icon. If you hold Shift and also hold the right mouse button, the snapping tool will be used when moving the 3D cursor. Now you can get exact locations without having to eyeball the placement. That concludes this tutorial. I hope it was helpful.